Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm JD, and if you're new here, welcome. Today I am talking about how and why I write multiple stories at once, and I want to offer some tips to help you do that if you need to as well. Now, I want to say just first off, I don't recommend writing more than one story at once if you can help it. I have struggled for many years trying to focus on one project at a time, and I've just found that my brain cannot do that. So I've developed a system that has helped me stay on top of multiple projects at once. The big downside of working on multiple projects at once is it's slow progress. A lot of these stories that I'm working on right now, I've been working on for years. These books take me so much longer to complete. So if you can do one book at a time, don't try to do more. But if you're finding that your mind keeps wandering off to different stories, then maybe writing multiple stories at once is something you need to do. First, I want to talk about why I write multiple stories at once. And really, my head, my brain just will not compute. I plan my work and writing in 90-day sections. I use a Kanban board, which is behind me. I use Sarah Cannon's HB90 Method from over on Heart Breathing's channel. And, a lot of writers will say, just finish one book, get it done, move on to the next one. And for the most part, that is really great advice. I find it does not work for me, and that's okay. A lot about writing is all about finding what works for you. And if there isn't advice out there, you create your own. I have multiple stories, projects, and started. I have found that I am working on 3, maybe 4 ideas at once. And it's just how I keep going. When I find that I've tried to sit down and focus just on one work for a 90-day section for my Kanban board, I stall out. And it's almost as if putting all my eggs in one basket freaks me out, and then I stall and I get writer's block, and no matter how much I push or try to work through it, I'm frozen, and I can't seem to push past that, no matter how hard I try. What I have found that works for me is to work on multiple stories at once, because when I get frozen like that on one story, I switch over to another story. Usually what I do to get started on another story like this is I start reading back through some of what I've written. Ideas start to spark, then I've figured out what I need to do with that, and I can make some progress on that story. So that way, by the time I start hitting roadblocks with that story and I can't move forward anymore, I go back to that first story that I had originally gotten blocked on, and I start the same process again. And that distance of stepping away from one story to focus on another story, it allows my brain to kind of work on that story A's problems for a little bit in the subconscious while I'm working on story B. And that way, when I get back to story A, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what needs to happen now. I can move forward with this, and I can go through and work on that. So it's almost like if you've heard of the writing advice to put your manuscript, once you've finished it, away for a little bit and come back to it a few weeks, a few months later with a fresh perspective, and then start writing and editing, you can kind of see some of the errors with it. That's what I'm doing, but it's more on a chapter by chapter or scene by scene basis. The progress is just very incremental this way, especially when I go across 3 to 4 stories at a time, but I just can't seem to push past it. And I've just accepted that this is how my process is right now. And some of the stories I'm working on right now are my Legacy series, my Lightwalkers series, Frostbite, and then my sci-fi book, which is titled Searching for the Stars. Searching for the Stars, I don't want to say it's an active participant in this merry-go-round that I'm doing, but lately it's been more and more active in the back of my brain, and so I know I'm going to end up working on it again soon. Writing multiple books at once is so frustrating and hard to do, but I can't seem to move past it. So I've just kind of started embracing it. I'm like, this is just how I am. This is just what I'm gonna do. Let's just keep going so I don't stall out and do nothing. Here are my 5 tips for working on multiple projects at once. My first big tip is to stay organized. You want to have all your notes for one project in one folder, all the notes for another project in another folder. You don't want to mix them up. If you tend to take notes in a planner or a bullet journal or something like that, make sure you are titling whatever note you're putting down for which project it is, or color code it or something. Stay organized. 2, plan ahead with your story. The biggest reason I can switch from project to project midweek or even mid-writing session is because I have planned ahead all of my work. Even if my outlines change, even if I have an idea that changes the whole rest of a book, mid-draft or something, I plan everything out with my writing down to something that's called phase outlining for scenes. So I basically go in before I write a scene and I block out what happens in the scene. He says this, she says that, they go here. This is a brief outline of what this scene looks like. It's usually all in third person, even though I tend to write in first person. And having that outline really helps me to be able to say, okay, this is where I was. This is what I was envisioning for this scene, and I can pick up at the drop of a hat no matter when I'm coming back to the story. Being a planner is crucial for being able to switch and know what's going on. Tip number 3 is to plan ahead with your writing time. Know that when you sit down, you know what project you're working on first, or what project you're working on for that week or month. I tend to go anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks working with like 75% of my focus towards one project, with notes and other small things going on in other projects before switching up. So knowing that, say, tomorrow morning for my 5:30 a.m. writing session, I am going to work on Will the Witch, and then going ahead the night before to have that document open on my desktop really does help. So that way when I get down to my computer and I sit down, turn on my monitor, there it is. I'm like, okay, I can get started. That helps. Tip number 4, this is something I use sometimes. I don't use it a lot, but if you're new to working with multiple projects, this may help you. It is listening to themed music while working on certain projects. So if, say for Frostbite, I tend to listen to a lot of techno and dubstep and whatnot. I have this very kind of techie vibe in Frostbite, and I like listening to that darker music. Whereas with my sci-fi story, it is a sci-fi western kind of reminiscent of Firefly. So I like kind of listening to these like steampunkish sounds and sci-fi westerns. I actually downloaded like the soundtrack to Firefly to listen to and stuff like that. So creating theme playlists to listen to while you're working on certain stories can be a big help. Or, finding, even if it's a few songs that don't relate to the story, but you only listen to those songs or that genre of music when you're writing this one project, can be a big help. It kind of trains your brain into thinking a certain way and helping it to focus on what it needs to do when you want it to do it. My last tip is to create mood and aesthetic boards to kind of look at and get into the mood when you're working on certain projects. Having that visual that you can pull out or change the desktop on your computer while you're working on a certain project can be very helpful into, again, the same with the music, kind of triggering your brain into saying, okay, it's time to work on this project right now. Anyway, those were my 5 tips for working on multiple projects at once. I hope you found them helpful. If you did, please leave a like below. Anyway, I'm always looking for more tips, so please leave a comment below if you have any tips for working on multiple projects at once. Or do you have any tips for working on one project at a time? That'd be more helpful for me, maybe. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you guys next time. Peace, love, and happy writing, y'all.